Why don't good engineers want to work for me? The excellence of the leader is the number one predictor and limiting force or driving force of talent acquisition.
You know, what are you doing to become better at your job? You step into a leadership role, you've got to do the work. Understand that there's a lot that you don't know. There's a lot that you're probably not good at, or you just don't have the self-awareness yet to know that you're not good at things. We're back.
We are back. Back and better than ever.
Back to grace the presence of everyone's LinkedIn again. We'll get another
Exactly.
get another login, and here's our face.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's on Twitter too, or X, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's pretty fun. I love the way the team is writing all the headlines. It's never what I would say, which is probably means it's awesome. So it's pretty
It's
fun.
probably a good thing that way.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. So September 24th, there's been a lot in the news around talent, immigration policies and things like that with visas and things like that. And so we thought we'd talk about talent acquisition in general. How do you think about your team? How do you attract the right folks? How do you keep their skills relevant or help them keep their skills relevant? And then obviously retain and sort of build with people over the long term. So it's kind of a fun topic. I'm excited for us to talk about. I know it's something you and I both care a lot about. We spend a lot of time and attention on both for our current company and then also as we were running big shops in other companies. I know it's something we spent a lot of cycles on. And so I'm kind of excited to talk through it in a very intentional way.
Everybody knows that getting the right people is important, but out of anything that you can do wrong to totally sink your team, your company, is hiring the wrong people over and over again. Far and away, the more time you spend with your process, your hiring, your talent development, you could just do that right, and you could still be far and above anybody else in the industry. Just get the right people. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, it's the key determiner of success, right? You have to build the right team. If you don't build the right team, it's hard. And to set the stage and the parameters, because this is a very, very broad topic, we're going to kind of lean more on our big enterprise, kind of Fortune 500 scale, IT department hiring. That's the stuff people don't talk enough about, right? Like there's you're building a startup or, how the FANG companies do it and all those different things. Like that information's out there. But for kind of your typical director, senior director, VP level at those groups, how do you think about hiring? In my experience, and you tell me if you've seen it differently, but in my experience, no one trains those people. Like nobody knows how to do stuff. They're just like, okay, let's go get some bodies. It's not the norm for that to be a very thoughtful exercise. It's not the norm for an organization to sit down and really help people think about it. Like the best you get is kind of what HR does, which is let's work on your job description. That's probably the most institutional help that you're going to get. And so as a result, it's a real opportunity for differentiation.
Yeah, out of anybody I've hired, I've all asked them the same thing. How much do you know about this? Like, well, I know this and this and this, but did anybody ever talk to you about what the role really entails? No. Did anybody train you on what you need to do? No. Do you know what all the ins and outs of caretaking and application in the enterprise space is? No. It's no across everything. And it's sad. Like, honestly, it's kind of sad that people are just left to figure it out on their own. Here you go. Here's a job. Do something.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, oh yeah, you're a developer. Like, okay, cool. But like, what is the culture that you're going to do? So the job description is really important, right? Like for sure, it's an important thing because it is the most granular piece of information you're putting out there. But what I would say is, you have to look at your whole ecosystem, right? And there's a lot of different factors, right? Like we know this, right? Like staffing strategies across, enterprise IT, there's a bunch of different approaches, right? Like there's things where, hey, we're basically going to hire a bunch of people from one of the big body shops and, big consulting organizations. Like we've all been there at multiple companies. People love to pull that lever, right?
Mm-hmm. It's easy. Team in a box, just done.
That's an option. We're not going to talk about that. Like we're not even going to make any value statements about that. That exists. That's a thing. We're going to ignore that for now. And then there's the two kind of categories of things that I think are useful for us to talk about are, you're trying to hire FTEs, right? Full-time employees, people you're going to build with that you want to have join the company and be there for a long period of time. There's really two ways to do that. You hire them directly or a contract to hire process where we will hire somebody as a contractor paid an hourly rate with a little bit of a premium because they're not an employee through a third party. And you do that for a period of time, and then you convert them into a full-time employee later on. I've seen that work. I don't love it as a cultural artifact, but it is actually a great way to hire at scale without downsides. I don't know what you think about that.
No, it works, right? If you are unsure about certain levels of talent, who you need, how many you need, the try before you buy approach can work. And you've got some trade-offs, right? I need people. I don't know for how long. This funding might not be around the next year. Well, contract seems to be the best thing for now because you don't know what the financial situation is going to be looking like, and you don't want to have a round of layoffs. That's not fair to anybody. And there's a bit of inherent risk to any contract that you bring in to a company and say, hey, look, this is a contract. It's funded for the year, but it does have an end date. If there's an advertised end date to the contract, it may or may not get renewed, but that's part of what the contractor is taking on. So that makes sense when you need to scale up quick, you need to scale up with a large amount of people. Maybe you even just need it for a temporary project. And that's very common too. Like, I just need 100 people, 6 months, build this thing, and that's it. It just depends on the situation and what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think about these things, right? Like, the funding models work the way you're talking about. There's X numbers of millions of dollars that needs to be spent within these calendar months. Might be anywhere from 6 to 36 or 48 months. It's been allocated, and that's what it is. We have no idea what month N+1 looks like, right? And unfortunately, that is the way a lot of the software world works. And one of the things that we'd always tried to do was get away from that and move to more of a persistent funding model that you then put projects through. So you kind of create that pipeline. We're not going to get into all that today, but that is a contrast. But dealing with the reality of what you're talking about, absolutely. And one of the things, the contract to hire thing can be really helpful. So if you think about just like a conversion funnel, and so you say candidates, you go through a hiring process, you put them into a contract to actually work for you, you're going to lose people at each step of that conversion funnel. And if you go straight from interview process to hire, that funnel's kind of done at that point, right? Like, you don't have another way to filter them down. Now, they can obviously leave, or there can be layoffs, or you can pip somebody out, but the contract to hire gives you one additional lever, right? So if you play the scenario you were talking about, say we're going to ramp up by 100 engineers over the next 6 months. Well, if you hire all those people full time, one, the budget's not going to be the same after that 6 months, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You don't know. You don't know what the budget run rate's going to be. And then the other thing is, you're going to have an error rate in your hiring. The most successful hiring spree I've ever gone on, we had about an 80% hit rate, right? That was a different one. We were bringing in some juniors and stuff like that too. We were sort of investing in the future. But that's an unusually high hit rate, right? Like, typically your hit rate's more in the 60 to 75% range. So that means for that 100 people that I just hired, 35 of them are people I would rehire.
Oh, yeah, because it goes both ways, though. That hit rate is going to be two-sided. It's either going to be they realize their job's not for them and they leave, or you're going to have to exit somebody prematurely. So that goes both sides of things.
Yeah. Now, I mean, maybe it's not quite that bad, but still, you have a pretty good population. So now if I've got funding troubles, or I've got people that, now that we've worked with them for 6 months, it like, because the question you always ask is like, hey, would you rehire this person? I love this rule. Would you rehire this person? If this person was trying to leave, would you fight to keep them? Right? Like, one of those two questions. And if not, great, give them a 3-month severance and help them out, move them on. Big companies don't do that. They don't do it for risk reasons. They don't do it for financial reasons. That's a large amount of money to give at the discretion of a hiring manager. In that respect, companies don't like to try to, they prefer to not give that kind of control to someone. So that's a bit of a thing that isn't usually happening, but it's a great thought experiment, right? Like, and so at the end of that 6 months, if I've done contract to hire and half the people I'm really excited about, well, cool. Now you can have a conversation about converting those people, versus instead of having to about face and do the other thing. It requires people to take a risk on you as a company or on the job in a way that isn't ideal, but it is good for everybody in the sense that you get that trial relationship before anybody really commits to anything. And there's a premium paid for that.
Yes, that's the thing, is that you pay an extra, a percentage on top of what you pay for full time. That could work in your favor, though. We made a point about people who wouldn't make the grade. Well, if you're paying a contract, you can end that when you want to. It's a sad reality, is that sometimes people just aren't going to work out the way you expected it to. But with a contract, there's no other decision other than, I'm going to sever this contract. Good luck in your next role. You've decided to not work out here, so I'm just making the decision final for you. And now that you've got a time period where you're recouping some of that money that you would have been paying otherwise to a full-timer, where I can't exit this person as fast. There's a lot of rules and regulations that I can't exit this person fast. So maybe you were sitting on that underperformer for 6 months where they're being a drag on your resources, whereas the contract is done now, versus you're waiting 6 months and you're still paying them. The premium could actually work out in your favor for a contractor versus a full-timer. It all depends though. It's just a game of numbers and the risk that you're trying to play and mitigate.
Yeah, 100%. And what the company wants to invest, right? Like the contract thing is a non-committal. From a company standpoint, an employee, there's more of a commitment there, right? And one other point I think I wanted to make too, right? When you're thinking about, hey, we want to build an excellent engineering culture, we want to upgrade the talent, we want to up-level the talent, as they say. The excellence of the leader is the number one predictor and limiting force or driving force of talent acquisition.
In a lot more ways than are obvious.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's all like indirectly that add up into a very powerful thing, right? If your senior leader is a great engineering thought leader or can work with great engineering thought leaders, then that allows better talent under that person. And then that translates down. The problem is in a leadership, this is something we don't talk about enough, I think, is that if you have a C player, to use the generic term, in a leadership role, everything under that person is basically capped at a C level, because B and A players don't want to work for a C leader because they're going to look at this person like, this guy's a joker. I don't want to deal with this person.
They'll leave or try to find another role, another team.
Exactly. And so the biggest thing is be good at what you're doing, right? Like, I know it sounds kind of trite to say it that way, but if you want to hire good people, you need to be good. And if you're not able to hire good people, you need to look back at yourself and say, okay, why don't good engineers want to work for me? What am I doing? What am I missing in either my thought processes or my understanding, my knowledge, whatever? And if you're like a program manager type who's now running in an engineering department, which happens quite a bit, and you don't have the technical chops to kind of go toe to toe with your directs, and that's a tough road. It's not that you can't do that. Like, one of my favorite engineering leaders doesn't have an engineering background really. Like, I mean, he was a CSS guy. Like, he wrote some CSS back when that was hard, but that was 15 years ago and whatever. Now he's able to do that because he values it and he understands it enough that he can have a good conversation with a solid engineer or architect or whatever. But if you don't understand this work your team is doing, it's going to be really hard for you to evaluate the right talent and attract them because they don't want to work for somebody that doesn't get what they do.
It takes a lot of self-awareness, though, to be able to make that decision that, hey, maybe I'm not up to the grade of where I need to be and I got to do some work. But yeah, I think it's always, hey, first off, if you're here watching this episode, that's a good step in the right direction. But also, what are you doing to become better at your job? I've asked a lot of individuals, because I'm just curious, and like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? Like, maybe I could learn something from you. What are you doing to get better? Well, nothing. Okay. Talk to somebody else. What are you doing? I might read a blog article. Okay. There are more people not doing something to get better at their job than there are actively trying to get better and studying and reading, because it's all new information. You take a new role, it's all new. You might know 20% of the job, but there's 80% of your boss's job that you have no idea what they do. That's going to be a lot to learn. And so you step into a leadership role, you've got to do the work, as they say, just do the work and understand that there's a lot that you don't know. There's a lot that you're probably not good at, or you just don't have the self-awareness yet to know that you're not good at things. But first thing is just knowing that I'm not as good as I should be at this job. What are my gaps? How do I get better at this? And just start researching that. There are many, many developers who I have spoken with, like, I would never work for that person again. I could talk them under a table with technical decisions. They look at me like with glazed eyes. And they're people that, they're in decent roles and decent positions, but their people would never want to work for them again because they just could not challenge them enough to have a good conversation with them.
This is one of the reasons I think that we make such a big deal about what we call the app manager role, because the app manager role is the one that really has to live in both worlds. If you've got an app manager that can't translate the tech to the business, it'd be like trying to be quarterback without arms. It's going to be tough to do. And if you're a leader, if you're somebody that sits above the app manager level in the org chart and you're not a technical person yourself as well, you desperately need really good app managers under you. And you got to make sure you know what that looks like and really go after and track that. Your process matters. You only have so much control over your process. You can usually carve out more of the process than you probably think, right? If you want to do an interview process, often the upfront piece, the collection of candidates, the posting of the job, all that type of stuff is sort of handled by talent acquisition or HR. And so you might not have much control over that, but you have your own network to then promote, whether it's on LinkedIn or whatever. Once they're in the official interview process, Most HR departments will give you some latitude as to the interview process. What I've always done historically in larger groups is an initial screen. Is this a real person? Do they have a brain? Can we have a conversation, right? Like it's 15 minutes. And then it's just asking logistical questions and answering the logistical questions for the candidate and then telling them what the process is going to look like. That's what the screen is. It's like, hey, do they have any idea what they're talking about? Do they seem shady? Are they behaving shady? Oh, my camera's not working and I've got this accent and, all that type of stuff that happens, especially at the enterprise. That first screen is about removing fraud and nonsense as best you can.
Because the rest of the process is expensive too. You take that on yourself to screen them. You invest the 30 minutes in there because the rest of it is going to be very expensive for your team. So the more you can say no up front, the better you're going to make good use of your team's time with having to interview or panel interviews after that. Because that could be, a couple days worth of people time overall, which it adds up.
Yeah, totally. And then, so then you get into technical screens and personality or people skill screens and things like that. And then usually whoever the hiring manager or the leader that's there usually will do a one-on-one towards the end as a kind of final check. Like, okay, let me look this person in the eye and make sure that there's a good fit here and all those different things. And honestly, like when I used to do that job in various places, most of the time your job there is to be the closer. Like you have to evaluate the person. What I would often do, we used to do this, right? Like when we would do it in person, I would get a sense of what's going on. We'd have HR walking them around, showing them the building because we had a cool building, a cool office. I would be talking to you guys and be like, what's your impression? Do you want to hire this guy? What's your impression? What's the group's unofficial assessment? And then I would walk in with some critical thoughts to validate from the team. But then also a sense of like, hey, am I really hard evaluating this person or am I going to start selling them on the job? And that's a big part of it. As a leader, engineers that have options want to know what they're getting into. They want to know the people that are making the real decisions. Like even if I didn't interact with that person on a daily basis, it was important for them to know, one, I'm not that scary. I'm human. I'm right here. And we can have a conversation and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. So like getting all that, like the know that, the person that's 2-3 steps removed from them isn't some tyrant is like an important thing. And also, hey, can you have a real conversation? Can you be a real human being? Like that goes a long way, shockingly. You would think that's table stakes, but it's not. Like it's refreshing to people. So really invest the time, I would say. The CEO should be spending 30% of their time hiring or doing recruiting or whatever. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right number, but I think the premise is true of anybody that runs teams. If you have a team of at least 10 people that report to you or either directly or indirectly, you're the CEO of a little world, right? And so you should constantly be thinking about the talent mix and what is your team good at? Where are the gaps? And this is a big part of talent acquisition too, is also thinking about the balance, right? Like you don't want to just have, oh, we're all rock stars. It's like,
well, before you get into the balance here, I think we need to there's something I want to mention about the recruiting process before we totally put that to bed is that don't ignore the recruiters internally. They might just be a gate to some individuals, but the best candidates I've had, I've worked through the recruiter to say, hey, look, just get to know the person a little bit. What is your process like? What's your screening like? How do you think of things? Get to know them a little bit, build some rapport. And typically they have some switches or some decisions that they make by default because that's what everybody else wants. So for example, is that a lot of recruiters in these big enterprises will collect a bunch of resumes and release them to you once a week. What we would find is that some of those candidates are hot in the market. They're pushing to find a new role. Within that 1 week, they've already interviewed, got an offer, and accepted that offer. And so you don't even get a chance to talk to the best candidates because they're already off the market. What I ask the recruiters to do is to send me the resumes as they come in. They come into you, do your once over, whatever you got to do, but send them to me right away. I will screen them. I'll set that up right away because they want it closed too, because it's part of their role to get these recs closed and off their plate. So the faster you can make the decision for them, the better off you're going to be. And you're going to be that person that's like, hey, I'm going to make sure I work with Duncan because he's always reviewing candidates, always giving me what I need, and I can get these recs off my plate too. Great partner. So you build up that partnership with the internal recruiters, you're going to get better candidates. You're going to get people who are going to close the recs for you quickly because it's not just a time to get to your plate to review the resume, but it's also the scheduling. So that can take a few days. Schedule the first interview, the second round, and then the offer. So you're looking at bare minimum in an enterprise for you talk to that person to a signed offer to them, minimum a week. And if they are having any other irons in the fire, that's minimal. Like it could be 2 or 3 weeks at times, depending on things. But the point is that the sooner you get to review that resume in these enterprises, the sooner you can make your mark on them and start selling them on the role right away if they're a really solid candidate. Like I said, some of the best ones I've had have been just like, hey, got the resume? I call them right away. It's like, hey, what's up?
I'm really glad you brought that up. 2 massive points in there. One, shorten the time frames for sure. Conversion funnel, time in stage, shrink as much as you can. And that's something that we used to work on. When we were hiring a bunch, we'd pay attention to that and be like, we'd have goals for how quickly do we dispatch or evaluate or disposition a resume? How quickly do we respond? What's our first response? Not non-automated response to them, like all that type of stuff. So streamlining that process, it is sales, as you said. One of the frictions is time elapsed. And so you want to reduce that to make sure you get as much as you can. And there's a lot of techniques to do that. One of the things that we did was if you're doing a large enough scale thing, you pre-book interview slot, right? So you put time on people's calendar, irrespective of an interview being scheduled.
Yeah, just hold it.
The recruiter could just drop people into those slots. So that way they don't have to go back and forth and all those types of things. But the other thing you said is a really, really good point, both from recruiting, but it's actually amazingly important anytime you're dealing with the bureaucracy of the organization. Lean in with the people, go partner with them, build a relationship. Like recruiters, procurement, risk, legal, all these people, they're nameless and faceless and they're annoying. It's nothing but a negative experience until you go and make them a human, right? Like go and interface with them.
They're not annoying. What you have to do to fulfill their needs is annoying.
That's my point. They're this dehumanized entity. Procurement sucks. They're so difficult. Everything's impossible. Now, sometimes you get individuals in those organizations, in those functions that are difficult. Sure. But like we've had amazing experiences. I've had amazing experiences with recruiters. Lean in with them, build a relationship. To your point, they know you're going to be responsive. So they invest more energy. They invest more stuff because like, oh yeah, I can partner with Jason. I can partner with Duncan. We can get this thing done. It'll be great. Everybody wants to win, right? Like everybody wants to win in their job.
Even if it's not part of their metrics, it's just like, I got it done. I closed the rec. It's just off my plate. It's just done.
Just seconding your advice there, right? That's a great advice in any situation. Call up the person and be like, okay, you've been assigned this recruiter, I've been assigned this procurement partner or whatever. If you're in the same building, go sit with them, go meet with them, buy them lunch, do something. Build that relationship. And that's true of all this stuff, right? Like,
it's not just to get something out of them though. Just to I want to make sure that we're clear on the advice that we're giving is that we're not trying to be nice to somebody just to get something out of them. It's to be a genuine good human.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And they'll know it. The advice is just to be a genuinely good person, to get to know your partners. You're going to be in the trenches with them. You might as well invest a little bit of time, spend the $20 on lunch, or coffee, tea, whatever it is, and just say hi to somebody, build a relationship.
The point of it is, if you're not a complete psycho narcissist, the thing that requires intentionality is the step forward to go and initiate. But once you spend the time with them, they're now a human to you. They're now a real person. You now are going to know their personality a little bit in a context that isn't stressful. And now you like them because most people are likable. If you want to like people, you can like people. If you want to be someone that finds problems with everybody, you can do that too. We've seen people that are really good examples of one or the other. But to your point, it can't be transactional. It can't be like, I'm going to butter you up so you let me do this thing I want to do.
It doesn't work.
They've got the shields for that. That will backfire. Do not do that. But lean in with them. Say, hey, I care about this. I know you care about this. How do we help each other? How do we work together? I tell you, these functions, they're so used to being either ignored or people being hostile to them. It's unbelievably powerful to just lean in and treat them well, treat them with some respect and like a partner, because that's what they are. That's what they should be if the relationship is healthy. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think it's something we don't say enough of. And I'm very quick to bash the functions. I've worked in all the functions that I like to make fun of or complain about or say they shouldn't exist. I've worked with great people in all those functions, and great people exist in all of those. And even if there's philosophical or org design differences, that's kind of irrelevant when you got to get the job done. Do what you got to do and go work with them and have fun with it. Try to enjoy each other. So what else do you want to talk about this? We're trying to build a good team,
I think you started going into like the balance of teams, and that's a big part of the recruiting, the talent engagement and development is that you have a good balance on your teams, because you come into a team that nobody knows what they're doing. The roles are all over the place. People aren't going to stick around. They're not going to want to join the team. But if you can make it attractive and give some opportunity for maybe not upward mobility, because that's not completely in your control to give somebody upward mobility, but lateral mobility, that can speak just as well to keep somebody well engaged and learn a new skill, because it's a job, right? People do it because they need the money, they're bored, somewhere in the middle there, but also they want to learn some things too. If you can give some mobility to, hey, look, you can be on my platform team for 6 months. Okay, need something else? You can go on a future team for 6 months and do some rotations. It works amazingly well that people see I'm not stuck. I won't just be stuck as an API developer, as a UI developer, as a mobile developer forever. I want to learn. I want to try new things. And so talk about that in your interview that, hey, look, we can change you up. You get bored? Fine. We'll find something else. But given that you can do that as part of your recruiting, it also works on the retaining. I've retained many people by just saying, all right, switch. Okay. And they stick around. So it's important to have a good balance so that you can call those audibles without having to second guess, without having to Jimmy's looking to quit. I don't know what I can do with him now because there's nowhere else for him to go. I can't move him. So, okay, see you, Jimmy. But okay, well, Jimmy's looking for something new, but also Julie over here has talked about wanting to swap to something else. The skill sets overlaps a little bit, but hey, what the heck? We can swap. It's easy. It works. Every time I've done that, it's worked.
I think that's a really good point. The other thing I would say is these big companies, unfortunately, are very ruled by the markets, right? And so as a result, they're very ruled by quarterly returns, which means they're very ruled by short-term thinking. And so most of the priorities and strategies aren't very super far into the future. There's no value statement necessarily about that. But I think in order to do this type of thing well, you have to sit in between that and the long term. You have to bring a long-term lens to the talent in a way that the company doesn't necessarily, like the HR people, and they talk about it and they look at it like at a population level and all those different things. But really, like as you hire people and you've got people in your orbit, whether directly in your team or nearby, everything's going to be organized in a short-term fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 quarters out, right? But to your point, the rotation thing is a good example. If you just want to execute for like the next 2 quarters, you just want to get a bunch of stuff done. Theoretically, the best thing to do is get a small team of a bunch of very senior people and just heads down, do it. But that's not actually sustainable because those people will eat each other alive and it's just not good.
But it works though. It works very situationally to put those together and say, hey, this is a temporary thing. Know it's going to be tough, but you're going to come out all better for it. So just to be clear, that does work.
It can work, but it's not the way to build an organization, right?
Correct. No, correct. Yes.
You could have a SWAT team that kind of does things, but those teams are very temporal, in their nature, right? And so because those people get bored, they get antsy, their egos get in the way, all those things. There isn't somebody to do the gopher work, and so then they have to do work they feel is beneath them. There's all these things that screw that up. So what you have to do as the organization leader or the team leader or whatever, you have to build a team that is sustainable while you're in an environment that doesn't care about sustainability, or the decisions that are being made don't imply that they care about sustainability, put it that way. And so you have to figure that out. That's part of the balance of being a great leader in these corporate environments is saying, okay, I know we're making a bunch of decisions that seem very temporary and very short term and all these different things. I need to navigate and care for this group of people, my tribe, my team, as best I can for the long term, because I know that's actually in the best interest of the company. It's not about being tribal and nepotistic and all those different things. Like you still have to do things that are in the best interest of the company. But while the company is thrashing about trying to get the next quarterly earnings, you're caring for the human resources, the people resources that are going to be there and getting the right mix to be as effective as possible. This is why having a sense of the strategy, where the business is going and where they're investing can be so valuable, so that you can properly do that and say, okay, hey, like a year from now, this is how big the team should be. This should be the role mix, because a year from now, we're going to want to do this thing. And so we have to start thinking about it now. If you can start to think and operate that way, you will so far outshine your competitors and your peers, because most companies do not think that way. Most companies are, oh, we have to go do this thing, hard about face. Let's go over there and do it now. There's all this waste and loss because they didn't think it ahead of time. They weren't prepared. In the macro environment, there's been a ton of uncertainty. There's been lots of layoffs, all these different things. Predictably, lots of layoffs early in the year. And then, okay, cool. Now we hit the back half of the year. People are starting to ramp up again. The same companies that just did big layoffs. And it's like, there's a lot of reasons why those things happen. So we're not going to get into that, but those things happen, and that churn is very expensive. So the more you can reduce the churn and make it consistent and not like up and down, the better off. If you keep those trend lines smooth, so you don't have big movements up or down, that tends to build cultural confidence in your team. People feel secure. They understand why things are happening. They seem rational. They seem fair. I don't like the term psychological safety, but it provides some stability for people. If things feel unstable, people leave because they're like, well, I don't want to be at the whim of some tax hike or rate change or something like that. And all of a sudden I lose my job because this company's kind of making decisions all over the place. So it's like, let me go somewhere where that is a little bit more stable, right? Like that type of thing happens, and you lose really good people because the people that are the most talented are the ones that leave first when that type of stuff starts to happen, because they're the most mobile.
What I have found in those situations, because you can't avoid them, everybody that you should be hiring is going to be smart, intelligent. If you're doing everything right, they're going to see things on the wall. They're going to see that there's a lack of decision or some decisions that are questionable, or they're going to know. They're going to know that either the business is performing or they're not, or they're going to interpret something the way they want to. But what you can get ahead of on that is being transparent with your team, with what you're doing, what your organization is doing. And that transparency helps when you need to have those conversations with them, because they won't see it as you just trying to retain them or quash whatever concerns they have. You're transparent, you're telling the truth. And so people will believe you that you really do have their best interests in mind. And it could be your best performer. They could say, hey, look, what's going on with the company? I'm worried about my job. But if you just say, oh, no, you're fine, don't worry about it. You're the best person on the team. They might not believe you, and they can just exit, because, that's the first time, Jason's been transparent like this with me. So I don't know if I should believe him or not. Or I've never talked to Jason before, and now I'm talking to him and he's trying to retain me. I don't know this guy, so I can't trust him. So see ya. It can happen.
It's not just about transparency, although it is that. It's also educate your people, help them understand how to think about these situations. I mean, engineers are crazy, and I'm one of them. Like, we come up with all these wild theories. Some of the theories that Josh used to come up with, like, it was just so insane and hilarious. Like some of the paranoia that would happen. And I'm like, bro, none of that's real. Let me help you understand what's happening. And you kind of like talk about the macro, talk about this and that. Like, I'm not in the C-suite of this Fortune 500. I don't know exactly what the decision-making parameters are. I know enough people that are in those rooms to know they're not idiots. They're making decisions for good reasons, whether you agree with the ultimate outcome or not, whether the ultimate outcome or not was, whether the decision itself actually played out or was the right decision is a different thing. Like, they have rationale behind what they're doing. These people aren't buffoons, even though it might appear that way. So as the leader, your job is not to just spew the company line, but to help them understand the environment, so that even though you're not in the boardroom, you don't know exactly the strategic decisions that are being made, but you can paint those decisions that are being made, even though you have some opaqueness as to what's going on. You can give your team a rationale for why those things could be happening and why there's reasonable things, and to give them a positive outlook on the company and the leadership. If you walk in there and you either don't address it, to your point, you don't have the transparency, or you have a negative view of it, like, I don't know what the hell these stupid people are doing, you're just poisoning the well. You're poisoning your own well. It's just not a good idea. Don't wait for the crisis to have those conversations. Have those conversations regularly, right? Your public companies, that you're talking about earnings reports, all that type of stuff becomes an important thing within the company. Bring it into your team. Talk about how it matters. Talk about the funding levels. It's like people that don't talk about money with their kids. Like, I don't get it.
It's like, oh, no, I can't talk to my directors about the funding. Yes, you can. Clearly, just, not specifics to the dollars and cents and everything. It's, at times, to the funding levels. There might be some things that you can't bring to your team, but how things work and how they operate and how decisions are made on, like, hey, look, we're overstaffed right now by 5%, but I'm doing that on purpose because I'll know there's going to be some people leaving throughout the year. So the second half of the year, we're going to be under budget. So that's going to even out. Like, it'll blow people's minds. Like, why? Because they're going to ask you, why can't I get my rec filled? Why? Because it's a daily thing of the budget. Every day we don't have that rec filled. I need to make sure that I'm making up for the shortfalls that we have right now, of where we were overstaffed for a little while. But having all those conversations with your people who report to you, because someday you're probably not going to be in that role anymore. And you're going to need somebody who's talented enough to fill your shoes. And if you haven't built them up and helped retain and helped to mentor your replacement, if If you don't have a replacement now, you are so far behind the ball because, hey, what if you get a rock star promotion? Like, but hey, Jason, you can't get this promotion yet because who's gonna fill your shoes? We can't promote you.
That's a real thing.
It's
That's
a real thing.
I've seen it happen even by the most well-meaning leaders. I should say this is inherently not well-meaning, so let's be clear. But like, they've prevented certain opportunities from coming to people because they couldn't lose that person. Agreeing with what you're saying about build your succession plan, build your team to replace you, work yourself out of a job. Always be doing that. This fear that people have that, well, if I give this person too much context, they will replace me and then I don't need to be here and all these different things.
Good.
Like, great.
You can get a promotion.
Exactly.
You could take another team.
If you're in a situation that's so dysfunctional or your skills are so weak and you have such little confidence in yourself that you're worried about your team growing too much to take over your job, you need a new environment. Like, you need a new environment. You need to look at a different part of you need to look at your career and what you're doing for work. And if it's like, are you in the right line of work and all those different things, because that is not a healthy mindset. You will not be as successful as you could be if you're building people up to replace you. Build people up to replace you. Absolutely. From a Machiavellian, like, power dynamic standpoint, it gives you lieutenants that are really, really good. Your influence can grow. It makes you look good because your team is a bunch of rock stars, and it allows you to gain more scope because you can give up responsibilities. Giving up responsibilities is a superpower. Like, I can't tell you how many times giving up responsibilities tripled my influence or tripled my responsibility. And it just happens every time.
You want to go off for a week and not have your phone call be ringing off the hook and having to work on your vacation. The best thing is when you can go on vacation, you get 0 emails that you have to respond to, 0 instant messages, 0 text messages. When you get back, hey, anything I need to work on? No, I talked to Jim and he took care of everything for me. We're good. That is such praise for your work when your individuals can do part of your job, make decisions that you would make because they know that's the right thing, what you would do. I mean, that looks really good for you, where you can just disappear, not in a negative way, you're just going to not do your job. That's not the point, but it looks good for you when your individuals can do everything that you're doing in their little pocket, right? And there's no hit to your deliverables. When you come back, there's no work on your plate that has to get done. You've got your individuals who are taking that part of your job that they know how to make decisions on, and they have a mini you embedded in their head that says, no, Duncan would have done this, and I feel confident in the decision, and nope, here's the status of that. He's downloaded to me. I already know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the landmines are, what we fixed, and here's everything that you're going to need to know. That is a huge, huge mind blow to your boss when they don't need you, because that shows that you've invested the time, invested the effort to de-risk yourself and make their job easier, because they have to think about their own contingency plan. They have to think about who they're going to be replacing with. And so if they can think of like, hey, look, you know what? I don't have to worry about Jason anymore because this is good. That's just a big weight off my mind, knowing that if anything were to happen, if he were to leave, his people can take the weight. I can put my effort somewhere else to make better decisions somewhere else. I don't have to worry about that. That's a big thing to never hear from your boss. Actually kind of a good thing, where they leave you alone because they know there's not a lot going on that they need to worry about.
Yeah, obviously people do that for me. Like, we call it a backup or a proxy. You know, in these big enterprise environments, there's approvals as a leader you have to do all the time, right? You know, I remember my old boss was hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, right? So he was like very much not available. So I got to be the proxy or whatever, or had to be, or whatever the thing was, for, 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever it was. It was a good trial run, right? It's an opportunity for that person to evaluate me and vice versa. Like, how do they do in those situations? How badly did they need help? Could they navigate things? All those different things. Like, build your folks up, educate them, train them in your job, train your team in your job. I mean, obviously you can't take a junior developer and try to teach them to be the CEO of the company. Like, that's not going to work, but like, progress them through, educate them on these complexities. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, right? Because people did this for us, and then we did it for our teams and for people on our team. This is one of the things I remember we did after I formed a new organization. It was a horizontal org, called it Core Engineering, right? And it was kind of like a platform engineering group, and pulled everybody in a room. Most people were in town, had some people fly in, and we spent a day basically me building context for them. Here's the org structure. Here's where we sit. Here's why it matters. Here's the influences. Here's the places. Here are our success criteria, all that different types of stuff. And the number of people in that room that, sometime in the next 24 hours, because we went to dinner and did all that, like, I've never been in a conversation like that. One of the guys is almost 50 years old. It's like, no one's ever sat me down and shown me this stuff. We always just have to piece it together over the course of multiple years before you ever get a sense of it.
And it's never quite right.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like the most basic thing in the world because people taught me this. So that's a lot of why we do this podcast, is that so few people are teaching this type of stuff to the emerging technology leaders. And so they're just kind of figuring it out as they go. They don't always do a great job of it. And so we want to help them be better at it. One of the bigger motivations of getting up here and yapping every week, it's not just to hear ourselves talk. I think about people that used to work for us, right? It's fun because individual developers will actually reach out to us and be like, hey, this was helpful. I just feel like we're continuing the conversations we would have had anyways. We're just doing it virtually. And we really encourage everybody to continue to do that for themselves, for their own teams. Like, try to get your team to replace you. It's a great way to give them hope for the future. And honestly, again, from a selfish standpoint, it's one of the best ways to advance. The one other thing is enterprises do have some pros, right? Like, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go work at Meta or Google or Netflix or Amazon or wherever, one of the AI shops. Making $100 million as an engineer sounds fun. So, like, I'm sure you'd want to do that. But there are some pros to working at big bank or something like that. You do get to work on a scale that's really interesting. You do get to work on mission critical stuff. Working on things like online banking and stuff like that is actually fun because it actually does matter if you go down.
There's a lot of decisions that you have to make.
Yeah. There's pressure there, but as an engineer, there's some fulfillment there. Despite some of the stuff we're talking about in terms of like funding and business models and the cycle and all that type of stuff, there is more stability. Like, those places don't tend to just run out of money and stuff like that. So finding a way to tell the best story for your shop is an important part of what's going on as well.
And I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took the time to work at a bank like that. I met a lot of good people and learned a lot about, to your point about the scale, right? Because you have to make a lot of decisions along the way that in a startup, you might not have to make for another 5 to 10 years if you're lucky. The bank scale is a real thing to learn from. And yes, that small little dial that you have to go from 256 megabytes to 512, that can make a big difference in, can you process this transaction in time? So the decisions that you have to make, every single one matters more than the others, not just from the technology, not just from the team structure, but every bit of it matters the longer you're there. It's just every decision is magnified much, much greater, from the technology to the people to your hiring decisions to your team structure decisions, from do I talk to this recruiter or not, to get to know them. Every bit of it matters a lot more, because you wouldn't have met these people otherwise. You're not just exposed to them. You have to make the active choices to do that. Whereas it might be a little bit more organic in a startup, but that's just what you're doing. So you don't learn that you have to make decisions to find those paths that you wouldn't have in a startup. It builds new paths in your brain to think of, how do I organize? How do I structure? How do I navigate these things that I wouldn't have to at a place that there's 10 people versus 10,000. It's a lot of learning.
You're a great case study. I remember having conversations with former boss of ours that was a common boss. And we talked about like hiring you at that bank, right? That's a great example of the type of thing we're talking about. The level of talent that you had wouldn't have been someone that bank could have attracted without the leadership that it had and some of the relationships that it had to vouch for those people and all those things. And even to recognize your talent. There is some degree to which outside relationships were necessary because you didn't look like what they were used to seeing. You weren't just one of those typical enterprise engineers. And so they didn't know how to properly evaluate you as well. So all those different things, it's a great example of, if you get it right, you can get great people. But if you're just kind of status quo, then you're stuck with status quo talent. So our injunction is lean into it, take it seriously. It's the most important thing you're going to do. It's more important than the architectural choices you make is the team you choose. It's a lifelong thing, building your tribe, building your team. There's a bunch of people that I consider to be kind of part of my team that don't work for me. We've had guys that are looking for stuff, and it's like, I feel responsible for people because they're part of my wider team, and I'm going to help them out as best I can, whether that means hiring them, getting them a job somewhere else or whatever. I mean, that's the other thing. Build the trusting relationships with your team. I've gotten people jobs that meant they left what we were doing, right? Because it was the right thing. And if you tell them like, hey, if this doesn't work, I'll hook you up. In a town like ours, you're only about 1 or 2 people removed from every hiring manager in the city. And so it's like, if you want a job, I will help you get that job.
I've had conversations with people who said like, hey, look, based off of our conversation, you gave me a lot of great advice, but because of that advice, I'm now going to move on. And I said, okay, Great. Going back, I wouldn't change a thing about it. You're playing the long game, not the short game. You can have a lot of short wins and you can meet today's goals, but then you're always going to be chasing that today. If you play the long game, as the infinite game, as the book calls it, then all those decisions become long decisions, and that things you decided on maybe a year, 2, 3 years ago, those are coming back to help you today because you're investing in your future. Do you want to be a day trader or do you want to play the long game? I don't want to be a day trader. There's a lot of work that goes into that. I play the long game, but those are the factors that you have to do. You have to invest in your people because they come back and work for you. Like, hey, Duncan, Jason, is there a job? Like, hell yeah, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to figure out how I can hire you. Or if not, you're going to find them something. Do yourself that service. Do your people that service because it all comes back in the end to work out for you every time.
100%. 100%. I mean, you're going to spend 40 hours a week with these people. Invest in them, make them better, pick the best people and then invest in them and become invested in them. Not just invest in them, but become invested in them. It's a great thing and it will make you better. And it'll be hard because sometimes you might have to lay somebody off or fire somebody that you really care about.
Right.
And that sucks and that's not fun, but it's better than doing it for somebody you don't care about in a paradoxical way. One of the first episodes we talked about, caring being a superpower, like, because so many people in these environments don't care. And that was about like delivery. Care about the team and it will lead to bigger and better things.
Yeah, 100%.
We'll get back to work. Thank you all for tolerating us yet again. I hope this was helpful to you. And as always, if there's additional questions or thoughts you have about the topic, feel free to hit us up at hello@devgrid.io or comments on all the platforms.
Ping us directly, whatever you can. See you.
Yeah, exactly. Cheers.